sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
Well, let me just say, bravo, San Diego Chargers fans, for the performance you put on yesterday, and also bravo to the San Diego Chargers players for their performance in a 30-14 win over the Miami Dolphins. Welcome to Bolts Brown Bag, live on 10news.com/Bolts Brown Bag, along with my season-long co-host John Gennaro from the Mighty 1090 and BoltsFromTheBlue.com. I'm Ben Higgins. It was, I thought it was going to be maybe ugly. I thought it was going to be really sad.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was either of those things, John. I mean, there was definitely some sadness tinged in the possible final game ever at Qualcomm Stadium, but it was loud. It was enthusiastic. It was great, I thought.
It was fantastic. And that was what was the most interesting part throughout the game, after the game, was the mix of pain with joy and appreciation and love. Before the game, there was a lot of talk about, is it going to get ugly? Is it going to get dark? Is it going to be sad? And I talked to a couple fans, and one of which maybe put it perfectly when he said, I've been through all the different stages of grief. I've reached acceptance. I just want to wish them well. And that's what the feeling of the fans was all day long. And I was proud. I was proud to be a San Diego Chargers fan. I was happy that I actually bought a ticket and went, and I was proud of the fan base as a whole. I think they were very impressive, and when you look at what the final game was like in St. Louis, and I'm sure what you're going to see from the final game in Oakland is not going to be this outpouring of love for the players and the people that are actually on the field. I'm glad that the fans were able to do that one last time and not get hung up on ownership, moving, all the stuff outside of the stadium.
All right, I think we got a pretty fun show planned today. We're going to go through, obviously, the game yesterday, more on the emotions, and I was struck by the emotions of the players, really genuine after the game. Phillip Rivers, Eric Weddle, Malcolm Floyd, just expressing their love for not just each other. You knew that they loved each other.
Yeah.
But their love for the fans, for San Diego, you could really feel it yesterday. So we'll do some of that. And then something really fun. I took at least as many as I could find. The best and worst, I thought, homemade signs that popped up at Qualcomm Stadium yesterday.
There were a lot.
Yeah, we're going to go through at least a handful of them, half dozen or so, and give some critiques where we thought they hit, where they missed, could have done better. So that's coming up in just a few minutes, and it's going to be fun. Start with the poll question, though, and to me, was it really the end? Are we going to feel silly? Well, not silly. I think we'll be pretty happy about it when we show up for the preseason at Qualcomm Stadium next year, because the Chargers are still playing in San Diego, because nothing has really been decided yet and won't be until at the very earliest the owners' meetings next month, January 12th and 13th in Houston. And you still have 3 teams vying for at most 2 spots in Los Angeles. And I'll tell you what, the atmosphere in San Diego, while it was, I agree with you, this is goodbye, thanks for everything.
Mm-hmm.
That was the atmosphere in St. Louis on Thursday night. That will be the atmosphere in Oakland this week. But at least one of those fan bases is wrong about their team moving, because they're not all going to Los Angeles.
Well, I can only speak for San Diego, and maybe I can't even speak for San Diego, but I can speak as a San Diego Chargers fan. That was the first game I attended all year, and part of the reason was I didn't want to go and support this ownership. I didn't want to go and tie myself to a fan base that's probably leaving. Even if the Chargers are back next year, I'm not going to feel silly, because this wasn't just a thank you for everything. This was an apology to the players who, in the last couple of weeks, got kind of vocal about the fact that the fans haven't been showing up all year. They haven't had a very good home field advantage all year. This was the fans showing up saying, look, we're still here. We still love you. We will still support you. We're just not here because of all the other garbage. It's got nothing to do with you. So even if they come back, I want them to know, and that's why I was there, and that's why I was cheering, that the only reason that this was the first time I was there all year was outside of the stadium things and had nothing to do with them.
All right, for the poll question today, right there along the right side of your screen where you're watching, I want you to go with your gut feeling right now. Where will the Chargers be playing their first home game of the 2016 season?
Wait, there has to be like 3 options, right?
San Diego, Los Angeles, and somewhere else was the
Ooh.
third option, which I'm not saying – I don't think they're going to move to like St. Louis as some
London,
grand bargain. But
Mexico
they
City.
could play it, like one of those out of town. Yeah, London. They could put them in their
Anaheim.
first home game.
Does Anaheim count as Los Angeles?
I guess it could be. I guess they could move up there. But really, I'm looking for San Diego or Los Angeles, and I threw something out there as a third option.
Okay.
Just, how it works. Right now, it's running about 60-40 San Diego. Maybe just emotion, maybe not rational. But there is still a lot of people out there who don't want to give up the hope that the Chargers may not leave. They might not be allowed to leave by the NFL. May still be here next season. It may just be on a delay. We might have to go through this next December at this time and do it all over again. Don't throw away the signs. You might need them again next year, or there may be a more permanent solution. We just don't know.
And I think so many people are still riding high off of that outpouring of love, not just from the fans to the players, but from the players back to the fans, that they're saying, this can't be the end. This can't possibly be the end. This is too good of a sports town for it to end, and it can't possibly end this way. So I think people are a little bit optimistic when they're voting. But what's funny is, normally on the Bolts Brown Bag, we're breaking down what happened in the game. And there's some stuff to talk about. Donald Brown's run was one of the high points of the season for me, and the stadium just exploded when it happened. But to the point that we shouldn't give it any time and we shouldn't really talk about it, on my way here, I was listening to Jordan Caruth filling in for Darren Smith and Marty Caswell, and Marty said after the game she was standing on the field, she was watching Phillip Rivers, and she looked over next to her, and you were there, and she asked you, what was the score of the game? Because it didn't matter. She's there to cover the game, and the score didn't matter. All that mattered was that they won. That's it. And that the fans had something to celebrate, and the fans had something to revel in.
She did very much. Ask me what the score of the game is. If you want to participate in the show, as always, you can do so by tweeting us or using the hashtag BoltsBrownBag. Got a comment in from Clarence Voyance. I assume clairvoyance for short. Get your lottery picks from him. Rivers and Gates will always be loved in San Diego. The Spanos family will be hated by my great-grandchildren. He is clairvoyant, so I guess he knows.
He knows. That we no longer have to speculate.
But, that's the one reason. And I brought this up a little bit last night, speculating about the future of Mike McCoy. But I think it also applies to the future of the franchise as well. We've seen Dean Spanos make emotional decisions before about his football team. And specifically, I go back to the end of the 2012 season when the Chargers beat the Oakland Raiders in the finale to finish 8-8, missed the playoffs, but they kept Norv Turner around one more season because they felt very good about that emotional win. Now, not necessarily good to make those emotional decisions, but I don't think.
But when it can benefit the city of San Diego,
I don't think you can discount the fact. Dean was at the game. He was up in the box. John and AG were down on the field. I saw them there. I don't know if you can completely discount the possibility. As one track as they've been to Carson, they were there yesterday. They felt what we all felt. They are not immune to it.
Right.
The feeling of San Diego, and I can't imagine that they're not at least having a little moment where they're pausing and going, do we really want to leave this city and what we just saw yesterday?
There was an interesting moment for me in the game because all those pregame conversations about, is it going to get sad? Is it going to be ugly? Are people going to run out on the field? Are there going to be fights? What's it going to be like? Everyone was saying, in the fourth quarter, when the game's, over, if the game's over, is, when it could turn ugly. So I was watching the clock and I was paying attention to what quarter it was. With 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, the Chargers, the Qualcomm PA system, started playing Lil Jon's Turn Down for What? Which I've been to enough Charger games in the last few years. I know what they're doing. They play that for the 20-second build-up, get everyone pumped up, and then they turn it back down because the action's starting. Well, they started playing it, and the action didn't start. For whatever reason. I wasn't sure why. I don't know if the referees were looking at something, but the action didn't start for about 2 minutes. And they let the song continue to play, and the fans just kept getting louder and louder and more excited and pumped up. And I literally saw people in the aisles dancing and screaming at the top of their lungs. And it was as loud as the stadium was all day probably. And I was like, this is what we're doing. The Chargers fans are proving to Dean Spanos, no matter what you ask of us as fans, we can do it. just give us a chance.
I'd argue that there was a fourth down that the Dolphins faced in the fourth quarter that was the loudest maybe it's been at Qualcomm Stadium all season long, in a very football-appropriate spot when it was supposed to be loud. It was great to hear.
Yeah.
For me, it was great to hear.
Well, and there was a couple moments. There was the turn down for what? There was the fourth down stop. There was the Donald Brown run. There was even the freakish catch by Malcolm Floyd, which I think was in the second quarter, third quarter, down near the goal line. There was a few moments where Qualcomm was as loud as I'd heard it in years, and it really felt like the place was roaring back to life and showing you, wow, the Chargers used to really have a home field advantage when the fans bought in.
I want to thank Danelle, who just tweeted in. We came from Vegas to support our Bolts. Love the emotion at the end of the game. Had some pictures. I just retweeted that if you're following along on Twitter. Anything from the game you really want to discuss? Was there anything significant in terms of the football? I mean, the Chargers played probably their best game of the season. It was against a pretty bad opponent that didn't seem fully invested in being in San Diego. But, I mean, it was played well. Danny Woodhead scored 4 touchdowns. That was pretty cool.
From a football perspective, Danny Woodhead played out of his mind. Phillip Rivers was fantastic. And by the way, if you get the chance, go see Phillip Rivers live and try and sit in one of the end zones so you're behind him for at least 2 quarters, because seeing the stuff that he sees and seeing him throw passes that don't exist until the ball is almost there is incredible. So he was great. Gates was great. Floyd played well. The story of this game, outside of the fact that Melvin Gordon once again didn't play very well and Donald Brown filling in for him played fantastic, the story of the game for me is the young talent on defense. And yes, the Dolphins stink, and offensively they stink. This is about as good as the win over the Jaguars a couple weeks ago, but Melvin Ingram played probably his best game of the season. Jerry Itachi was good. They played a lot of their young kids on the defensive line, and they played very well. Manti Te'o looked good. Denzel Perriman looked good. Jason Verrett looked fantastic. They played a lot of Darryl Stuckey, which it seems like they always do at the end of the season, and then they give up on it in the beginning of the next one. They played a lot of Darryl Stuckey instead of Jaleel Adai. I thought he played great. Overall, this defense is impressive. Like, to think of where they came from about a month and a half ago to now, where they couldn't stop anybody, and now it's hard to actually get down the field on them. It's very, very impressive. And the one long pass they gave up was when they tried to give Eric Weddle his curtain call, and they pulled him off the field a little early. The next play was, I think, a 60-yard deep pass exactly where Weddle would have been. So I'm not going to hold that against them. I'm really looking forward to the matchup on Thursday against the Raiders. I'm a little worried because the Chargers are older than the Raiders, but it's going to be a defensive matchup between two teams with fantastic young talent on the defensive side of the ball.
But defensively, it wasn't just the Dolphins game. You kind of mentioned it, but against the Broncos, against the Chiefs, the Chargers have played well defensively.
Ever since Donald Butler was benched and ever since Brandon Flowers went out with an injury, this defense has been much, much better, which just goes to show you that we know everything, and we should be the ones coaching the team, because we were saying at the very beginning of the season, why is Donald Butler out there? Why is Brandon Flowers out there? And the team has gotten dramatically better since they've removed those guys from the equation.
All right, let's skip ahead to the end of the game, because I thought the real story was the emotion. I was down there on the field. Wow, I mean, you had hundreds, maybe even a couple thousand fans who stayed, an hour after the game. Players stayed out longer than I've ever seen them stay out, signing autographs, greeting fans, and it was just an emotional scene. And we heard from some of the stars, some of the key players of the team, Phillip Rivers, Malcolm Floyd, Eric Weddle. Just take a listen.
It truly is an honor to be a quarterback in the NFL. And essentially, when you're a quarterback of a team in the NFL and you've been blessed enough as I have to stay in the same place for 12 years, you become the quarterback of that town, in a sense.
All good things come to an end, and I wouldn't take anything back from my 9 years here. Loved every second of it. The fans have been amazing to me.
Yeah, it's so hard to stay focused. I was just trying to stay focused. It's so emotional. It got teary-eyed right there. Man, it's just crazy, when you play in the stadium for that long, and it comes to an end like that.
The roughest part for me was Malcolm when they were playing that. So, how music can get you. Music can stir up your emotions different, and they were playing. I don't even know the song, but it had me. It was Malcolm, seeing Malcolm, those little highlights and stuff, and had a hard time calling the next play in the huddle.
I believe Green Day was what got him.
Time of your life.
Time of your life, yeah.
And this is what struck me. I'm not a super emotional person, and I try and detach my emotions from watching, especially this team, because I try and take the analytical stance, and watching Phillip Rivers walk off the field and thinking to myself that he may never play again in front of San Diego, I thought what he did. He's the quarterback of this town, which makes him the leader of this town, the face of this town. We haven't had an athlete with that kind of connection to the town and that kind of star power since Tony Gwynn, since Junior Seau.
LT had it a bit.
LT had it a bit, but there's just something about Phillip Rivers that's so honest. And in a situation like that, it was absolutely perfect to see him coming off the field with tears in his eyes, because you knew the love that fans have for players is not often reciprocated. But in that instance, it seemed like it was, and it was special. It was very special.
All right, you ready to have a little bit of fun
Yes.
with the signage? All right,
Please.
we picked some of the homemade signs, and we're going to do our best and worst reviews and critiques of all your hard work, your lettering. You got the
We're
butcher
gonna make
paper
fun of
out.
all of it.
Let's get going. All right, we got a few out here. All right, this was one of my favorites. I thought they captured it quite well.
Yeah.
This is
yeah.
just awkward.
It's you know, if we're criticizing the design, you could probably do a little bit more, but the spirit of the sign is absolutely
I
perfect.
loved the irony, just the droll humor of "this is awkward." This is just awkward. That was one of my favorites. All right, let's next one. All right, now this one kind of combined, and they went with the old girlfriend kind of theme.
Yeah.
I don't love that.
Yeah.
You said it. I thought you said it well last week on our podcast, on the Squadcast.
The misogynistic
Yeah.
point of view that, if the team's leaving you, it's like a girlfriend leaving you. It's stupid. It's
And
absolutely
the fans,
stupid.
you don't need to change.
Yeah.
You don't need to change. It's
Yeah.
not your fault that they didn't get a stadium done here.
Right. It's nobody's fault.
This was sweet.
Ivan Goodall year, please keep my Chargers here. Yeah, I saw a lot of Santa-themed signs and a Grinch. There was a Grinch-themed sign, which I hope is in here because that was my
I didn't
favorite.
have the Grinch one. That was a good one. I did see that. There was a naughty, and then he flipped it over Dean Spanos.
Yeah.
The Chargers do belong in San Diego. I have no idea what CB and S stand for.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
A lot of people had that sign. It was very confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I was sitting right behind these guys.
This was the one that caused some controversy. It
Yeah.
ended up getting passed around, so they couldn't take it away from the security.
Yep.
They said, there's bad words on there. Well, no, it's just F''D.
Right. Use your imagination.
There's
but
nothing
the
there.
little kids aren't figuring out what that means.
Right, but that was the controversial one. And
No move clause.
I didn't get that one.
Hmm.
Not no move clause.
I'm not feeling.
Don't exercise the
Chargers
out clause at Qualcomm Stadium.
See, that would have been a little
clause.
bit better. I don't know why you have a Chargers themed clause and not a Chargers themed sign.
Overall, though, I applaud the effort of everyone.
There was a lot of signs.
Yeah, who went and made the effort to try to make a sign and
There was
make
more.
it mean something.
there
There was a lot. Why? There was no way I could get to all of them. We could get shots of all of them. I mean, there were probably hundreds.
There was more than a couple that were getting taken by security. I thought the people that had written something good on one side of their sign and something bad on the other so that they could get on camera and quickly flip it around was genius. Absolutely genius. And I applaud those people specifically.
All right, got another tweet in here. Jonathan C. asks, did you get to this last week, but what are some of your favorite Chargers moments at Qualcomm Stadium? I don't know if we discussed it specifically. I did a whole series on 10 News last week, great stadium moments. And I was there for a lot of them. I mean, certainly the Miami playoff game, the win that got them to Pittsburgh the week before the AFC Championship. You had the Mark Say touchdown, and then you had to survive. And I remember the agony of Pete Stoyanovich lining up for a potential game-winning field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the relief. When you just saw off his foot, it was just such a miserable kick. You weren't even going to have to hold your breath as the ball was in the air. It was so far right and short that it just never had a hope. But that was really one of the great games. Phillip Rivers shared his. He thought the Darren Sproles overtime walk-off touchdown winner against the Colts in the 08 playoffs was his favorite moment at Qualcomm Stadium.
And that might be my favorite Chargers moment, period. But I wasn't in San Diego at the time. I was actually on the other side of the country. I don't even know if I have a favorite Chargers, moment that's, this particular scenario, this particular game. But there are a lot of memories I have tied to certain players, perfect passes thrown by Phillip Rivers or times when I've seen Vincent Jackson break 10 touchdowns, or LaDainian Tomlinson running, 70 yards for a touchdown. Seeing that in person is something that I will never, ever forget. So I've tied myself more to the players than the games, I think.
I wasn't at the rally. I was in college at the time when they came back from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I listened to it on the radio, and our buddy Chris Ella, who does our picks competition we're going to get to, he was one of the anchors down there that day, and I was driving back to school in L.A. that day
when that was
happening.
happening.
I was listening to it, but that is, I think that for many people is the #1 all-time Qualcomm Stadium moment, at least for football, with maybe the Garvey home run being the baseball moment.
Yeah, I mean it's up there. I have a lot of moments tied to that stadium that are Padres related, that have nothing to do with the Chargers, and that's one of the other sides of this is I get to relive some of those memories too when I go there for a Chargers game. So if the Chargers leave and now the Padres have left there and the Chargers have left there, it hurts both sides of your sports fandom as a San Diegan.
All right, time for our Bolts Brown bagger of the game, and I already got the business from our art director Steve Liu. Why didn't you choose Danny Woodhead? Because he was the glory boy. He scored 4 touchdowns. He
I know who
need
you went with then.
The Bolts Brown, but you do? I don't think you do.
All right, go ahead.
All right, we'll see.
No.
I thought Antonio Gates quietly had maybe his best game of the season. He was the one that moved the ball on offense. Danny Woodhead scored all the touchdowns, but Antonio Gates moved the ball along with, I thought, one of his best games, getting open, catching passes. Who would you was the obvious choice?
I thought when you said Danny Woodhead was the glory boy that you were going to go with Donald Brown.
I did consider Donald Brown. But, I mean, his yardage all came after the game was pretty much in hand.
I don't care. He was fantastic.
He was good. He was good.
I will say, every single 3rd and long situation, 3rd and 6 or more, you knew they were going to throw it to Gates, and it still didn't matter. Because Phillip Rivers threw it before Antonio Gates even made his cut. You had no idea where Gates was going. So by the time the ball had gotten there, Gates had gotten open, caught it, and it was an easy first down. They weren't playing the best defense. The Dolphins aren't great, but it was entertaining to see. They knew what was coming, and they still couldn't stop.
All right, I've got some good news for you, John Gennaro, because with 2 weeks left in the NFL season, you have taken the lead in our picks competition. Congratulations. Thanks to a
latecomer.
Thanks to choosing the Atlanta Falcons over the Jacksonville Jaguars as your 3-point upset selection. You have 50 points now, and I almost took the Falcons, and I took the Eagles, and I'm killing myself.
Yep.
The Jets missed an extra point, and I missed that by a half point.
You know what? You were
the 2.
And this is week 15. I think for the first 10 weeks, you were in first, I was in second, Chris was in third. It's going to be really entertaining when, by the end of the season, you're in third, I'm in first, and Chris somehow finds his way to second place.
He could still find his way to first. He's only 4 points behind you. He could
catch me.
He could.
Can't.
2 weeks left, 12 points still available. It's anyone's ball game.
He's going to screw up, and he's going to pick the Dolphins.
All right, let's get now to our 3 questions. We got our web producer, Ferris Tanyos, who is in today. What have you come up for us today, Ferris?
So, first question, Odell Beckham yesterday, fair or foul?
Okay, first of all, did you see this whole thing now about the Carolina Panthers bringing bats out onto the field?
I saw the video.
This is just being tweeted recently, and apparently this is not a new thing either. But
they just carry around bats.
They're just carrying around bats on the field before the game. I don't think that excuses Odell Beckham. But
well, was it not the Carolina Panthers who at one point brought an axe into the locker room and a kicker put the axe through his leg? Was that?
I think that was the Game of Thrones episode.
No, this happened. It was either the Panthers or it was the Jaguars, and some coach, either I think it was Jack Del Rio, which makes it the Jaguars, had a tree stump in the middle of the locker room, and he said, we just got to keep chopping, boys. And he brought an axe and he put an axe in the thing, and the kicker took the axe out, was goofing around with it, dropped it on his leg, and was out for the year. Didn't chop his foot off, but made a severe enough cut.
I thought the Martin Gramatica jumping celebration was the worst
second worst
ever.
injury.
Who is it? Chris
Hansen?
Chris Hansen dropped an axe on his leg. Oh
was he on the Jaguars? There we go. So
right.
Jaguars. So not the Panthers. But,
right.
Teams find all these different ways to motivate. And, the Panthers are probably like, let's keep hitting them. Get the big
Cam
hits.
Newton could
big
miss
hits.
the playoffs when he accidentally has a bat swung and breaks his arm or something. At the end of the season.
That'd be bad news. But you got to motivate guys one way or another.
I hear that Odell Beckham sources in the league saying 1-game suspension coming for Beckham. Giants are pretty much done. They need a tie between the Redskins and Eagles in the last game just to have a chance, I think.
He needs to look. This first time, Odell Beckham, one game, teach him a lesson, calm the hell down. He's actually been doing parts of this throughout the season. Opposing teams have realized they can get into his head, and he starts throwing punches like an idiot. So this time he took it past punches. He actually aimed for, what's his name, Josh Gordon? No.
No, Josh Norman.
Josh Norman. He aimed for Josh Norman's helmet with his own helmet, trying to, give him a head injury. And he went too far. So I think give him the 1-game suspension, tell him to settle down. If he ever does it again, then it's a much bigger penalty.
Imagine how many fantasy playoff games, though, that the refs deciding not to throw him out impacted, because he had done nothing.
Yeah.
The first 3 quarters,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, no points at all. And because he was still in there at the end when maybe he shouldn't have been,
He got to catch that touchdown.
he got to catch a touchdown, light up, add a few points, and swing a few fantasy playoff games across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
question number 2.
Question 2, who's going to face the Patriots in the Super Bowl?
That's an excellent question. Right now, it's hard to pick anyone but the Seahawks, I think.
You know, the Panthers have no chance at it?
No, the Panthers. the Panthers look great. At some point, I'm going to stop. At some point, I'm going to stop believing that Cam Newton is Superman. Because at this point, name 3 of his targets that he throws to.
Ted Ginn Jr.
Devin Funchess and
Okay.
Jericho Cotchery.
Fine. So
I mean, it's only because he throws 5 touchdown passes every week. You get to hear these guys' names over and Greg Olsen.
none of these guys are starters on any other team, and yet he throws 5 touchdown passes a game. I don't understand how he is so much better than every other football player that he can just put up absurd numbers with no good teammates around him. It is insane. So at some point, that has to come to an end.
Where
don't
does,
think
where
I-
does Rivera get any of the credit? I mean, he was going to get fired 3 years ago.
He gets some credit,
He
yeah.
gets fired in the middle of last season.
So does Sean McDermott, who's been a fantastic defensive
I
coordinator.
think the Seahawks are actually playing better than anyone, but they're going to have to go on the road all the way through the playoffs.
Yeah,
and
they love that home
without
field
that
advantage.
12th man,
Yeah,
I
they're
can't
gonna
see
get-
him making it through a third straight year.
Well, they're going to get the Redskins probably in the wild card.
That's a win.
Yeah, that's a win. And then they might have to go to Carolina.
Probably.
Yeah.
Beckham has been suspended for
All right,
1 game.
one game.
Breaking news.
1 game, Giant season probably over.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
So that division goes to the Redskins.
I'm going to go with the Panthers, though. They got the home field advantage.
All right, you
I know
pick
that doesn't always work. You rarely have 1 versus 1, and that's
It's
what
al-
I'm
it's
predicting
also-
right now. But
It's also the old, do you really want to go undefeated?
it could be the Steelers. I'm still not convinced. It might be the Steelers against the Panthers in the Super Bowl.
Well, that's
You
you
think
guys
so?
said last week. You said the Steelers are the team the Patriots don't want to.
Right.
Don't wanna face.
Probably.
Yeah.
And after
Probably.
that comeback against the Broncos yesterday, they've got a little more confidence,
Yeah.
getting a little more dangerous.
I'll say this: it's been a bad NFL season because it's been very top heavy this year. There's not a lot of parity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad teams, and there's a handful of really great teams.
You could have an 11-5 Jets team miss the playoffs.
You can.
This year.
And so it's been a pretty bad NFL season, but I think it's going to be a really great NFL playoffs because, there's at least 4 or 5 teams that I would not be surprised to see in the Super Bowl.
Final question.
Final question. Will you go see Concussion this weekend?
Okay, that's a tough one for me because I've got family and kids, and it's Christmas, so probably not seeing. I haven't seen Star Wars yet. I'm probably not seeing Concussion before Star Wars. So no, I'm not going this weekend. But I am excited about it more than I was before I started seeing the trailers. I didn't realize Albert Brooks was in it, and
Yeah.
that's the great line. You're going up against a corporation that owns a day of the week, one that used to be owned by the church. Now they own it. I loved that line. That was great.
That was an incredible. That was a really good impression
Of Albert
Did,
Brooks.
did you practice that? Is
I
that-
didn't, no.
Is that in your repertoire?
He's been practicing Albert Brooks for 30 years.
He's one of my favorites. Defending Your Life with Albert
Great
Brooks and
movie.
Meryl Streep. One of my classic comedies. I love that
That's
one.
I'm
Great
probably
movie.
going to wait for Concussion to come out on DVD or streaming or something like that to watch it. I will eventually watch it this week, and I'm going to go see The Hateful Eight instead.
There you go. A little Quentin Tarantino for him.
I've had enough football in my life for the last 3 months. I can live without it for this weekend.
Ferris, happy holidays. Thank you.
You too.
All right, Raiders, short week for the Chargers. Players are off today. John, coaches, I'm sure, putting in the game plan. But it's weird because they're going to go up to Oakland on Christmas Eve, and they're going to have to go through it all again, except this time they're the Miami Dolphins going into the stadium that could be facing their last game with the fans, all the emotions, the signs probably. They're going to do it all over again 4 days later.
The funny thing is that they're going to spend Christmas with their future roommates. Like this is what what amounts to family for the Chargers this year, and they're going to go up and they're going to have to. I don't even want to say play the villain, but they're going to have to go up and see what kind of response the Raider fans have for the team that may be leaving there. I think the Raider fans have been very supportive of Mark Davis this whole time, really putting the blame squarely on the city. So I think they are going to show up. I just don't know that they have the same type of fans locally that the Chargers do.
Let me throw one last thing out before we wrap up.
Okay.
If the Chargers win this week, can Mike McCoy save his job with a win in the final week in Denver and a 6-10 record? I think he can. I'm not saying that he should be able to, but knowing the Chargers, they're going to feel very encouraged by 3 straight wins at the end of the season, 2 big divisional road wins, and it may not happen. They may lose the last 2.
They probably will.
And it'll be an easy call, I think, in my opinion, at that point at 4-12.
Yeah.
But I can see the wave of emotion at 6-10 possibly saving Mike McCoy if they can get it.
I think the chances of that happening are probably less than 5%. And if it happens, I still think they should fire him. That being said, and I put this caveat on everything, ever since we found out that the Chargers gave Tom Telesco an extension after this last draft, they're the San Diego Chargers. They will never do what you expect them to do. If you were to say, hey, do you think the Chargers are going to light Qualcomm Stadium on fire today? I'd say, well, a normal team wouldn't do that. But for some reason, Mark Fabiani may think that's a good idea, so they might do it. So
he's just thinking 3 steps ahead of you, John.
They could they could very well, if they win the next 2 games, say, we got to ride this wave of emotion, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, even if when they're winning, Phillip Rivers doesn't appear to enjoy playing football for Mike McCoy, and that's the most important part.
All right, I came up with this hypothetical, extremely dramatic, and never going to happen scenario, and thought, wouldn't this be the greatest?
Okay.
Chargers win this week.
Yeah.
Dean Spanos comes out before the last game and says, you know what? Let's let this last game decide. 3-year contract for you, Mike McCoy, with a win. You're fired immediately after the game if you lose. Who wouldn't watch the game if they knew that the coach was absolutely coaching for his job 100% in that one game? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, and Dean Spanos dresses up as Jigsaw from the Saw movies right beforehand. You're coaching for your job in front of a nationwide audience. Go.
Got to beat the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
Okay, Thursday night game. I want to thank everyone, though. John, I know you've got some holidays coming up, so
I do.
Not sure our schedule with you the rest of the way, but if we don't see you again, thank you for sitting in here all season long. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for
having
having
me. And, by
me.
the way, John Promotion going to be on the air today from 3 to 6 with Craig Elston on the Mighty 1090.
Filling in for Scott and BR.
And I just saw on Twitter a post you wrote about the game last night for Vice Sports.
Yep.
National article that has come out as well, so you can check that out. I'm sure you're going to tweet it all out. So congratulations on your success. Get lots of John Gennaro here today.
Lots of it.
And for John Gennaro, I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Bolts Brown Bag Chargers over the Dolphins 30-14. Thanks for being with us here on 10news.com.